So today we're going to talk about eighth notes, and particularly eighth notes in a time signature that has a 4 on the bottom. So 4/4, 2/4, 3/4, basically anything with a 4. All of our examples today will be particularly in 4/4, and in this type of time signature, an eighth note is worth half of a beat. All right, so 2/8 notes in essence makes up 1 beat, which is a quarter note. This particular sheet is dealing with eighth notes in multiples of 2. So there's either going to be 2 or 4 or 6 or 8 eighth notes at a time. And when you have an even number of eighth notes that start on a downbeat, which is the number 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the beats are, when you have 2, 4, 6, or 8 eighth notes that start on a downbeat, they're going to have this beam connecting them. So it's gonna look like a quarter note where you have the filled in circle and the stem, and then there's 2 of them, and they're connected by a single beam that comes across it. All right, here you're gonna see that there's 4 of them together. Sometimes you're gonna see, like here, that there's 2 of them together. It works either way. But when you see that beam, you can pretty much assume in a time signature that has a 4 on the bottom, you can basically assume that the first note is going to be a number on a downbeat, and the second one is going to be an and, which is on the upbeat, and then it just keeps alternating between numbers and signs. All right? So we're going to start by just looking at a full measure of eighth notes, which is what you're going to see right here. All right, you see 8 eighth notes in one measure of 4/4. The idea of an eighth note is that 8 eighth notes make up 1 whole note. All right, so the 8 of these eighth notes, if you put them all together in 4/4, is going to equal the same amount of time as a whole note. We need to divide them up evenly so that there are 8 steady eighth notes happening. So, if I were to count this along with a metronome, which I'm going to pull up right now on my computer, that way we could make sure it's steady. Hold on 1 second. All right, here we go. We're going to put the metronome at about 100 for now. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I think that's a little bit fast for now, for learning. We'll put it down to 78. All right, each one of those clicks is a beat. If they were quarter notes, it would say 1, 2, 3, 4. But these are eighth notes. They're twice as fast. So the 1, 2, 3, 4 all happen when they would, but now we have an and directly in between them. So it ends up like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And that's simple eighth notes. These happen to be grouped with a beam connecting 4 of them at a time. All right, now, first thing we're going to do is work on counting eighth notes for many measures in a row. All right, important to work on this with a metronome using a variety of tempos. I'm going to slow this down to 66. Because the idea of eighth notes is that they are half of a beat of whatever tempo you are playing. All right, eighth note is not a speed. Eighth note is a rhythm, a duration within whatever tempo you're using. Here we go. Ready, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 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 and. That was a tempo of 66. I'm going to bump the tempo up to 88. I'd like you to try counting along with me. if you're learning this and trying to figure it out, best way to learn it is by practicing it. 1, 2, ready, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 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 and. That takes us to the end of letter A. If you want to practice that more, you can pause this recording and set your metronome at multiple tempos. I just got a metronome on my computer by typing in metronome into Google, piece of cake, and it just brings the metronome up, and you can use the slider or the plus and minus signs to change what speed you want. The lower the number, the slower the speed's going to be. I'm going to go back to 72 here. And let's look at letter B. What we're doing now in letter B is we're replacing the eighth notes. We're replacing 2 eighth notes with 1 quarter note on beat 4. All right? So the idea here is to show how the quarter note and the eighth note relate to each other, and also how to come in and out of quarter notes or other rhythms and come back to eighth notes. So as you see here, we start off with 6 eighth notes, just like up here. 1 and 2 and 3 and. All right, the next symbol is going to be 4, but since it's a quarter note, that's it. There's nothing more. The 4 being a quarter note, and since a quarter note is the same amount of time as 2 eighth notes, means your 4 is happening here, and your and is encompassed inside of this quarter note. So this takes up the space of 4 and an and. So in your head, you would kind of be thinking and while you hold that out. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. All right. So let's count letter B at 72 beats per minute. And it's the same thing 4 times in a row, so you can get used to putting a quarter note on beat 4. Ready, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 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 All right, now for letter C. Again, if you want to practice that, you can push pause here, and you can keep your metronome on, try various tempos, and work on that a little bit. I'm going to move on. I'm going to go to letter C, 82 beats per minute. And this time we put the quarter note on beat 3. So notice we have 4 eighth notes, 1 and 2 and. We have a quarter note on 3, which is an entire beat. All right, that brings us to 4, where we have our next set of 2 eighth notes. And remember what we said, when you have an even number of eighth notes beamed together once, the first one is pretty much always going to be a number, and the second one is going to be an and. All right, so that's, you see that here. You've got 4 together. Starts with a number, then an and then it alternates number and. Let's try letter C. 1, 2, ready, and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 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 and. All right, you can stop and practice that one if you'd like to. What I'm basically doing is showing you what it looks like to place a quarter note on each of the 4 beats possible. Let's take a look at letter D. Put the tempo up to 90. The quarter note's now on beat 2. All right, we're all eighth notes except for the quarter note on beat 2. Let's try counting D. Ready, and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 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 and. All right, now letter E puts the quarter note on beat 1. And then eighth notes for the rest of the measure. So you're going to hold beat 1 and everything else, as you see. 2 eighth notes, you've got a number and an and. 4 eighth notes, you got number and number and. All right, and in 4/4 time or 2/4 or 3/4, basically the bottom number being a 4 means the rhythm rules I'm teaching you apply. The top number tells you how many beats you need to say each measure. All right, and each new measure is signified by this line that happens in between the notes. So every measure, every amount of notes in between the two lines, from there to there, from here to here, from here to here, and then again from here to here, it needs to have a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4, since we're in 4/4. So once we get to that new bar line, we start over again at 1. All right, let's try it. Letter E, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 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 and. All right, if you want to stop and practice that a little bit, you can feel free. Now, I've got a second sheet here. On here, the idea is that I have now placed, for F, G, H, and I of the supplemental sheet for eighth notes, I have placed quarter notes in various spots within the measure. All right, now keep in mind this is 4/4 all the way through. The sheet's in 4/4. It should be written there. I'm sorry it's not. But the idea here is that every single time you have eighth notes in this sheet, they're either groups of 2 or groups of 4. And every single time, the first one's going to be a number and then an and it could alternate when you have eighth notes beamed together. So you could take, I'm not going to count these for you because I don't want you to just memorize what I say. But what you would do now, when this video is over, is you can go through each line and you can practice counting out loud with a metronome. I recommend a slow tempo. Your rhythm's here. Now, just in case you're not exactly sure how to do the rhythm writing, I'm going to write letter F for you so you can see how I actually do it and how I'm expecting you to do it for any homework that I'm giving. So, I'm going to take you through my mind and how I come to what number and what symbol gets written where. All right, so looking at letter F. The very beginning of the first measure is always going to be beat 1. So I'm going to put a 1. All right, we've completed one beat, which means now we're at beat 2. And you also know that you have 2 eighth notes beamed together. So that means you're going to have number and. All right, we've already done 1, so now we're on 2 and. Moving forward, we have another set of 2 eighth notes with a beam connecting them, which means it will be number and. And since we've done 1 and 2, that means it's 3 and. All right, now since we're in 4/4, and there are 4 beats per measure, that means this final quarter note has no other choice but to be 4. All right, let's move on to measure 2. We've got a bar line, which means we reset to number 1. And we have 2 eighth notes beamed together, which means it's going to be number and. And since we're at the beginning of a measure, that number would be 1 and. Now we've completed a beat, and we're on to a quarter note. And since we finished beat 1, now we're going to be on beat 2. And a quarter note being an entire beat, we've completed beat 1, we've completed beat 2. Now we have another set of 2 eighth notes beamed together, which means it needs to be number and we've done 1 and 2, so it must be 3 and. And now that we've completed 3 whole beats, and we need to complete the 4/4 measure, that means our final quarter note is going to be 4. Now we have ended our measure. We have a bar line, and we're going to move on, which means we start again at 1. And we have 2 eighth notes beamed together, and it's the beginning of a measure, so that would be 1 and. We've completed a beat, and so the next thing, it's a quarter note, which is on a beat, and we're done with beat 1, so that's going to be beat 2. Beat 2 is a quarter note that's an entire beat, which means we move on to beat 3. Beat 3 is a quarter note, which takes up an entire beat, which means we move on to beat 4. And you also know how to label that because we have 2 eighth notes beamed together across the top, which means number and this number must be 4, so we can complete the measure. And we move on because we have the end of a measure and a bar line. We're back at the beginning. We're back at number 1. And you have played an entire beat, which means now we're on beat 2. And beat 2 is made up of 2 eighth notes beamed together. And anytime you have 2 eighth notes beamed together, that means it's going to be number and the number is 2, followed by an and. And then we have 4 eighth notes beamed together. And we have finished beat 1 and we have finished beat 2. So the next note is going to be on beat 3. And this is where we alternate. We do number and. So we go 3 and. The next number is 4 and. And that's the way you can go about practicing your rhythm counting in the way I just thought about it. All right? Always remembering the key is that when you're in a time signature with a 4 at the bottom and you have 2 or 4 or 6 or 8 eighth notes beamed together, that they're going to start with a number and be followed with an and. And if there's multiples, then you just keep alternating until it stops. So, to count this one now, I'm going to put the metronome at 64. And the goal is for every number to land on a click. All right? So, those clicks of the metronome are 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But now you've got to account for those eighth notes that happen in there. All right? But the key is to make sure a number happens every time you hear the metronome. Ready? Let's count and. 1, 2, and 3, 4. Oh, I did that wrong. Sorry. I'm not going to start this whole video over. It's been 17 minutes and 20 seconds. Just let's start that again. Ready? And. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, and 2, 3, and 4. 1, and 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and you're done. So I would say, if you struggled with that, practice that a few times. You can do it along with the video. You could do it with just a metronome. All right? And then when you feel good about that, then I want you to try writing in the counts for letter G, so you can practice writing in counts. And then you could practice counting letter G with a metronome. After you feel really good about that, then maybe do letter H, but write it very lightly so you can erase it. And practice doing letter H, rhythm writing, and then rhythm counting. But then erase the numbers. And see if when you erase the numbers, you can still get it right. All right? Or maybe print it a second time. And one copy can have the numbers written on it, and one copy can have no numbers written on it. So you can practice doing it without. And then when you get to letter I, maybe try doing that without any numbers written at all. All right? And see if you can get the hang of doing this, all right, without writing anything in. Now, J, K, L, and M, it's more of the same stuff, but the difference is that I've now included half notes, whole notes, quarter rests, and half rests. So this is stuff we worked on the first 3 supplemental videos for whole notes, half notes, and quarter notes. So I've included halves and half notes, half rests, quarter rests, and of course quarter notes and eighth notes. All right, I hope this was helpful. I think it pretty thoroughly explains how to handle eighth notes in a variety of ways. If you'd like some help after you've worked on this, please reach out to me and I would be more than happy to either make you some more practice exercises or point you in a direction of some other materials. All right. Enjoy and thank you for working on your rhythm counting.